This is my Suzuki S40, which is also known as the Suzuki Savage or the LS650. No, not that kind of LS, though it would be interesting, but those are called boss hosses. So I got this bike from family friends, and it sat in their garage for a long time. So I fixed it up, put it back together, and today I'm going to be working on the front brake. So I've already changed the hydraulic fluid for the front brake, but throughout my time owning it, it's been kind of squeaky or squealy. So what I'm going to be doing today is removing the front caliper, popping out the brake pads, and then coating them in the brake pad lubricant, which should stop the squeal. So to do this job, you're going to need a 17mm socket, a 5mm Allen wrench, brake parts lubricant, and later on a torque wrench to torque everything back to spec. To start, we're going to loosen the pad retaining pin, and then we're going to loosen our mounting bolts. Okay. We're just going to remove them all the way. It's got a couple washers, 2 washers here. Caliper comes off. Now I'm going to slide it off the disc, and with that done, I'm going to completely loosen the pad pin bolt. So once it's unthreaded, you can just pull it out. I'm going to use this is Ceramic Extreme brake parts lubricant, but you can use the red stuff too. So it's a nice convenient little brush. I'm going to cover the backs and the little ears here. Just make sure you don't get anything on the surface itself. And slide this back into its spot. Same thing on the other one, the other side. Now before I put the pin back in, I'm also going to put a tiny bit on here. These are the mounting bolts, and this is the pin that holds the pads in. So I'm going to show you again from this angle because this camera was in the wrong mode earlier. So when you remove this, you're going to want to loosen the guide pin, or the retaining pin, and remove these bolts completely. And slide it off. And then to remove the pads, you can pop this one down. Well, first you have to remove the pin, and then you can pop this pad down and over, and the other one up and out. And once you've coated the back with your brake parts lubricant, you pop it back in. And the way I did it for the bottom one was to line the pin up in place just below so that I can slide it through. And then once that's in place, put the top one in, make sure the pin gets through it, and push that through. And then we're going to reinstall it on the disc, make sure it's lined up. And then we're going to get our top bolt started to hold it in place. And we can use it as a pivot for the bottom bolt. You can do the other way around too, whichever is easiest. And these are hand tight. We're gonna install them, and they give you ranges in the manuals, 25 to 40 Newton meters for the mounting bolts, or 18 to 28 foot-pounds. So I'm gonna do 32.5 Newton meters. That kind of splits the difference. Just remember that you want to hold the wheel in place so you don't roll the bike back. Alright. And then the retaining pin, or pad pin bolt, is 10 to 15 Newton meters. So I'm going to do 12.5, which in foot-pounds is 13 to 20. Pop that in. And that's it. It's not super tight. And that is the brakes lubricated, and that should address any screeching that you have. Now, if you're doing this job and you're replacing the pads with fresh pads, you're going to want to push in the cylinder And then, but while you do that, you also want to make sure your brake reservoir is open. So if you're changing the pads, the process is a little more involved because you have to push in the cylinder. And then up at the front brake, you're gonna have to remove the cap here to let any fluid rise up. And then once you put your new pads in, you're gonna wanna actuate the brake enough times that it refills everything, sets everything in place. Pretty quick job, hopefully it'll solve the screeching. You can apply this to, you know, any bike, but for this one, it's 2 bolts and a retaining pin. Yeah. Now with that out of the way, I'm gonna take off the seat to clean it up, but I'll also show you the seat mod that I did. And after that, I'll do a health check on the carb before starting it up. Now, as part of the process of cleaning this bike up after the winter, since I've been storing it in a tarp type shed, I'm gonna have to clean the seat up. So to remove this, there are 3 bolts. There's 2 bolts on either side, and then a Allen key screw holding the back in, which is 4 millimeters. So I got my 10 millimeter socket here. Go over to the other side, do the same thing. So with that off, lift it up from the back and pop it out of its slot in the front. It's very simple. There's the 3 points and it hooks in on the front here. Move this aside. Now, this gives you access to some of the wiring, and it also gives you access to the front mount for the seat. So one common issue with this motorcycle is that people complain about sliding forward, and you know, especially if you're a guy, sliding into the gas tank is pretty uncomfortable. One way you can fix that is by raising the hook where the seat mounts, and that gives it a slightly upward angle, which makes it a lot more comfortable. So to do that, you're gonna remove the original screws that mount this essentially flush with the frame. And so you're gonna buy, if you remove those, you can go to Home Depot, match the thread, and get longer versions, you know, that are gonna come down in here. And you're gonna get rubber spacers essentially that usually you can get them, they're stoppers with holes through them. They're gonna be the right size, or you can drill through. And you're gonna get 2 of those. And so I think I got 1 inch, and they're cones, inch rubber spacers, they're cones. And that really helps, you sit in a good position. Now this is also, if you do want to remove the fuel tank, these are actually the screws that hold the fuel tank in place. So, if you ever do need to remove it to, for example, change the fuel petcock with the Raptor one from an ATV, which doesn't rely on vacuum, that's a good time to do it. The tank does only secure with these. There's a hook at the front underneath to remove it. Let's see, anything else? If you do remove the gas tank, you'll also have to unscrew the speedometer cable, which screws in to the engine case. So if you've left your bike parked over the winter or a couple years, or you just bought a bike that's been sitting and hasn't been running, one good thing to do to start is to drain your carburetor. So any old fuel that's in here, you're gonna wanna get rid of it. And it's a good chance to check, if the float is stuck. So on the S40, the drain is screwed here. So you're gonna wanna have something to catch whatever fuel comes out. I usually use the bottom of a bottle. Just drop that under there. I'm gonna go get one of my JIS screwdrivers, very important to have for Japanese bikes, and unscrew that and let anything drain out. Now the reason that I use JIS screwdrivers is because the profile is slightly different from Phillips, and as a result, if you use Phillips, you might strip your screws and it's a nightmare. So really helpful. See, it looks like, yeah, some old fuel coming out here. Just let it drain out. There we go. Actually, I'm going to open the fuel, fill up. See if it comes out clear after that. Okay, now I am leaving the petcock open to see, because in the past I've had a situation where the valve got stuck and it just overfilled the carb and then just started pouring out, and you do not want fuel to drain out from the carb because the starter is right here, and then spark plus gas means fire, and it has happened that people have had their bike burned down. So after storage, really important to make sure that this is, you know, in good condition and not going to overflow and cause all sorts of problems. But it looks like we're good. Let this. Okay. All right. So with everything drained out and cleaned up, it's time to start it. So I'm gonna pull out the choke, turn on the fuel access. Bike's in neutral, make sure we don't have any overflow anywhere on the carb. And let's go. First try. Now if you're wondering what kind of exhaust this is the stock exhaust off the Harley-Davidson Sportster, and it works really well for more flow and good sound. You can either weld it on, or in my case I made a bracket that replaces the factory one, and it does save a lot of weight. All right, it's a success. So the Suzuki S40 is a really fun, light bike, especially if you're not too tall. If you want to learn to work on a bike, it's a really good place to start, and you can usually find them for a really reasonable price since their production run was from 1986 to 2019, and it was pretty much unchanged except it got an upgrade from a 4-speed to a 5-speed transmission in 1993. So keep an eye out for that if you're looking for one. There's a lot of mods available for the bike, there's a really strong online community, and you can even get a cafe racer conversion kit if you want. And if you want to make it really powerful, with a few mods you can actually get it up to 45 rear wheel horsepower over the stock of like 25. I've had a lot of fun owning this bike and working on it, and it taught me a lot since it was the first full rebuild that I've ever done. It's a lot simpler than the big touring bike I had, which you probably saw in the background of the video, and you can look forward to seeing that soon on the channel. So if you're interested in that, be sure to subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, leave a like. If you have any questions, leave a comment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.